Look at somebody and tell them, stop worrying about the how. Tell them you're stressing over steps God never asked you to take. Because when God gives you a promise, He doesn't hand you a blueprint. He hands you faith, and faith will take you places your logic is too small to fit into. Today, I came to talk to some people who are tired of trying to figure out every detail, every answer, every step, as if your destiny depends on your ability to calculate the journey. But hear me, you don't have to know how when you know who. The process God is guiding you through may not make sense right now. It may feel slow. It may feel uncomfortable. It may even feel like it's going backwards. But the process is working for you. The process is shaping you. The process is preparing you for what you prayed for. So stop panicking about the blueprint and start trusting the builder. When God gives you a promise, He rarely gives you the instructions that come with it. He doesn't sit you down and unfold a step-by-step manual. He doesn't hand you a GPS. He doesn't give you the timeline, the sequence, the map, or the method. He simply speaks a word, plants a vision, stirs a dream, and lets that promise rest in your spirit. And for many of us, that is where the struggle begins, because the promise comes before the process. God reveals the destination long before He reveals the directions. And if you're not careful, you will mistake the absence of details for the absence of God. You will start believing that because you don't know how, you're not called. But the truth is, the promise always shows up before the process, because the process is shaped around the promise, not the other way around. Think about Abraham. God didn't show him the land on a map. God didn't send him a brochure. God didn't draw out a route. He simply said, go to a place I will show you. That means the showing didn't happen until the going began. The clarity didn't come until the movement started. And for somebody listening right now, that is exactly why you feel stuck. You are waiting for God to show you something He can only show you after you move. You are asking God to explain steps He cannot reveal until you take the first one. The promise comes first because it activates faith, and the process comes later because it develops obedience. When you receive a promise, it awakens something inside you. It stirs hope. It creates expectation. It stretches your imagination, but it also confronts your limitations. It makes you aware of everything you don't know, everything you don't have, and everything you've never done. And that is intentional. God lets you see the promise before the process so you will understand that the gap between where you are and where you will be must be filled by Him. If the promise arrived with instructions, you would trust the instructions instead of trusting God. If God gave you the blueprint, you would worship the plan instead of the planner. So He gives you the promise in raw form, pure, unshaped, undefined, so you will learn to cling to Him, not clarity. There's a reason God waits to unfold the process. The promise is meant to inspire you, but the process is meant to prepare you, and preparation takes time. Some of you want God to rush the process, but if He rushed it, you would arrive unready. You would walk into a blessing that you don't have the maturity to carry. You would stand on a platform your character can't sustain. You would hold opportunities your integrity can't protect. The promise comes early, but the process takes time, because God is not just preparing the promise for you, He is preparing you for the promise. Sometimes the promise comes so far ahead of the process that you begin to question whether you heard God correctly. You start second guessing yourself. You start assuming you made it up. But the promise is not a mistake, it is a prophecy. And prophecy rarely looks possible when it first arrives. When God speaks a word over your life, He doesn't speak to where you are. He speaks to where He is taking you. He doesn't speak to your weakness. He speaks to your potential. He doesn't speak to your insecurity. He speaks to the greatness He planted in you before the foundation of the world. So don't be surprised if the promise seems too big, too distant, too impossible. That is how you know it's God. You might be in the middle of the process right now and wondering why nothing looks like what God said. But listen to me. Just because your life doesn't look like the promise doesn't mean the promise isn't working. The seed doesn't look like the tree. The caterpillar doesn't look like the butterfly. The lump of clay doesn't look like the finished pottery. The process disguises the potential until the appointed time. And some of you are frustrated because you can't see progress. But faith is not built on what you see. Faith is built on what God said. The promise arrives first to give you vision. The process arrives later to give you wisdom. God shows you the future so you will walk with purpose, but he hides the details so you will walk by faith. If he gave you both at the same time, you wouldn't need him. So if you feel overwhelmed because the promise seems too distant, too unclear, or too unrealistic, take a deep breath and remember the promise always precedes the process. And the process is not proof that God has left you. The process is proof that God has begun. You don't need to understand the how. You don't need to figure out the when. You don't need to map out the steps. Your job is to carry the promise. God's job is to create the process. And when God starts working on something, he finishes it. The same God who spoke the promise will walk you through the process. Stop worrying about what you don't know and start standing on what you do know. If God said it, he will bring it to pass. The promise is your beginning and the process is his building. Trust him. Worry is a thief dressed like a friend. It walks into your mind quietly, pretending to help you figure things out, pretending to protect you from failure, pretending to prepare you for what might go wrong. But worry is not preparation. Worry is suffocation. Worry does not build your faith. It breaks it down piece by piece. And when you spend your days consumed with how everything is going to work out, you are feeding the very thing that is weakening you. Worrying about the how is like watering a weed and wondering why your garden won't grow. Every time you give energy to fear, you rob strength from your faith. The reason worrying about the how weakens you is because worry shifts your focus. It takes your eyes off the God who promised and fixes them on the problem in front of you. Faith looks up. Worry looks around. Faith says, God is able. Worry says, but what if he doesn't? Faith stands on the word. Worry stands on assumptions. Faith expects God to move. Worry assumes you must move in God's place. And the moment you start believing that the outcome depends on your ability instead of God's sovereignty, your faith starts crumbling underneath the pressure you were never meant to carry. Some of you are exhausted not because the journey is difficult, but because the weight you're lifting doesn't belong to you. You're holding questions God never asked you to answer. You're trying to solve problems he hasn't even assigned to you. You're trying to open doors he hasn't asked you to knock on yet. Worry takes the responsibility off of God and places it onto your shoulders, and no human being is strong enough to carry divine assignments in human strength. When you worry about how, you shrink your faith down to the size of your understanding. But faith was never meant to fit inside your logic. Faith thrives in the unknown. Faith breathes in the unseen. Faith grows where your understanding ends. Worry is rooted in the belief that if you don't figure it out, it won't happen. But faith is rooted in the belief that God is already handling what you can't see. Faith says, I don't know how, but I trust who. Faith says the method may be hidden, but the miracle worker is present. Worry keeps you awake at night, replaying scenarios that haven't even happened, while faith lets you rest because you know that God never sleeps nor slumbers. The issue is not that you don't have faith. The issue is that you've been feeding your fears more than your faith. Anything you feed grows. Anything you starve dies. If you keep feeding worry, it will eventually drown your faith. But if you feed your faith, worry will starve to death right in front of you. You must understand that worry is not just a feeling, it's a focus. Whatever you stare at becomes larger in your mind. When Peter stepped out of the boat, he was walking on water as long as he was focused on Jesus. But the moment he became worried about the wind, the moment he started analyzing the how, the moment he tried to figure out the physics of what God was doing, he began to sink. Worry sinks you. Faith lifts you. Worry pulls you under the weight of your own reasoning. Faith raises you above the very thing that should have drowned you. Peter didn't sink because the water changed. He sank because his focus changed. And some of you feel like you're going under, but it's not the situation. It's the worry surrounding it. Worry demands answers God has not given. Worry tries to see what God has covered. Worry tries to pressure God into revealing what he intends to unveil in his timing. But faith says, even if I don't see it, I trust that he's working. Faith does not require full understanding. It requires full surrender. As long as you need every detail, every explanation, every confirmation, your faith will remain fragile. But when you reach the point where you say, God, I don't know how you're going to do it, and I don't need to know. I trust you. Something in your spirit strengthens, your posture changes, your heart settles, your mind finds rest. Worry doesn't just weaken faith, it distorts your identity. It makes you forget who you are. It convinces you that you are inadequate, unprepared, unqualified. But faith reminds you that God equips those he calls. Faith reminds you that God finishes what he starts. Faith reminds you that God isn't asking for your perfection. He's asking for your trust. When you worry about the how, you are trying to take ownership of an outcome that belongs to God. You're trying to direct a movie you are only starring in. You're trying to manage a miracle you're supposed to receive, not create. The burden of how was never yours to carry. The how belongs to God. If you could see how everything was going to work out, faith wouldn't be necessary. If you had the blueprint, you wouldn't need belief. If you had the answers, you wouldn't need assurance. God hides the how so your faith has room to grow. He hides the how so your trust can deepen. He hides the how so that when the breakthrough comes, you will know it wasn't strategy, it wasn't intellect, it wasn't luck, it was him. So stop letting worry drain you. Stop rehearsing disasters that will never happen. Stop giving fear a microphone in your mind. Your faith is too valuable to be weakened by questions that were never yours to answer. The how is God's responsibility. The trust is yours. And when you choose trust over worry, faith doesn't just grow. Faith rises. The process is not just a path you walk. It is a mirror that shows you who you really are and who you are becoming. The process is God's workshop, God's training ground, God's shaping room. Most people want the promise but resist the process, not realizing that the process is the very thing that prepares them for what they prayed for. The blessing is not the challenge. The challenge is becoming the person who can hold the blessing without collapsing under its weight. The process is designed to transform you, not torment you. It is not punishment, it is preparation. It is not God withholding something, it is God constructing something inside of you. When God takes you through a process, he is not just changing your situation, he is changing you. He is stretching your faith, maturing your character, sharpening your discernment, refining your attitude, breaking your unhealthy patterns, and enlarging your mindset. Growth requires discomfort. Transformation requires tension. You cannot become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you used to be. Somewhere along the journey, something has to break, something has to shift, something has to stretch. And that is why the process feels uncomfortable, because comfort never produced transformation. We often ask God for elevation, but elevation requires excavation. Before God lifts you, he digs into you. He digs up insecurities you ignored. He digs up fears you buried. He digs up pride you didn't recognize. He digs up habits that cannot follow you into the next level. And when God starts digging, it doesn't always feel spiritual. Sometimes it feels frustrating, confusing, overwhelming, but God cannot build on a shaky foundation. He cannot place destiny on top of dysfunction. He loves you too much to promote a version of you that is not yet stable enough to stand in the blessing. The process transforms your perspective. At the beginning, you only see what you want, but as you go through the process, you begin to understand why you need to be changed before you receive it. You realize the process is not working against you. It is working in you. You start seeing that the things you thought were obstacles were actually opportunities for development. The delays weren't denials, they were divine tuning. The setbacks weren't blockages, they were building blocks. The closed doors weren't rejection, they were redirection. Transformation shifts the way you interpret your own life. Some of the greatest transformations happen in hidden seasons, quiet seasons, lonely seasons, seasons where nothing seems to be moving. The caterpillar does its greatest transformation in the cocoon, not in the spotlight. The clay is shaped on the wheel, not on the stage. The seed grows roots underground before it ever breaks the soil. Too many people want visibility before they've allowed God to do the invisible work. But visibility without transformation is dangerous. What good is a platform if your character collapses under pressure? What good is influence if your identity is fragile? The process protects you from receiving too much too soon. God uses the process to teach you endurance because destiny requires stamina. Breakthrough isn't just about getting there, it's about staying there. And the staying power is built in the unseen seasons of struggle, discipline, sacrifice, and perseverance. The process toughens you. It teaches you how to push when you feel empty, how to believe when you feel broken, how to stand when everything around you is shaking. You learn resilience, not because life is easy, but because God is strengthening what's inside you. The process also reveals your motives. Sometimes you don't even realize what's in your heart until the pressure shows it. The process tests whether you want the blessing for the right reasons. Do you want the position for purpose or for validation? Do you want the opportunity to serve or to be seen? Do you want the promise because God placed it in you or because you're comparing yourself to someone else? The process refines your intentions. It purifies your desires until what you want matches what God wants for you. Transformation also requires isolation at times. There are seasons where God pulls you away from voices that distract you or people who drain you. Sometimes He separates you so He can speak to you more clearly. Sometimes He isolates you so He can develop your identity without interference. Isolation isn't abandonment, it's incubation. God shields you from what could stunt your development. And though it feels lonely, it's in those lonely places that God shapes you the deepest. The process is also where you learn trust. Not the shallow trust that survives only on good days, but the deep trust that holds you steady when everything falls apart. Trust is not developed in comfort, it is forged in uncertainty. When you don't know what God is doing, when you don't understand why the path looks the way it does, when nothing makes sense, but you still choose to believe, that's where trust is born. And trust transforms you into someone who can walk into the promise with confidence instead of fear. By the time God brings you into what He promised, you won't be the same person who began the journey. You'll be wiser, you'll be stronger, you'll be more grounded, you'll be more grateful. You'll carry humility instead of entitlement. You'll walk with purpose instead of desperation. You'll have the character to sustain the blessing He's giving you. The promise was always yours, but the person who could carry it had to be formed. The process is not delaying you, it is developing you. It is molding you into the version of yourself that is aligned with your destiny. And when the transformation is complete, you will look back and realize that the very things that frustrated you were the same things that formed you. The process didn't break you, it built you. Delay is one of the most misunderstood parts of God's process. We live in a world addicted to speed, fast results, fast answers, fast breakthroughs. But God is not rushed by our deadlines. He is not pressured by our impatience. He doesn't move according to our schedule. He moves according to His strategy. And when God delays something, it is never random. It is never wasted. It is never without purpose. Delay is not denial. Delay is often God's way of preparing the blessing, preparing you, or preparing the environment so that when the moment arrives, everything aligns exactly the way it's supposed to. The problem is that delay feels like silence. It feels like being forgotten. It feels like God has moved on from your prayers, your dreams, your desires. You look around and see people passing you, friends moving ahead, others getting opportunities, relationships, promotions, breakthroughs, and you start to wonder, what about me? Did God skip over me? Did I miss my moment? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't miss anything. What God has for you has your name on it, and a delayed blessing is still a destined blessing. God never delays what He does not intend to deliver. The delay is often about strengthening your foundation. If God gave you everything you asked for, the moment you asked for it, your roots would be shallow. You would enjoy the blessing. Hey, but you wouldn't be ready to sustain it. Some gifts are heavy. Some blessings require maturity. Some opportunities require emotional stability, spiritual depth, and character development. And God loves you too much to give you something that will crush you. So he delays the timing so the weight of the blessing does not break you when it comes. You don't grow roots in the sunshine. You grow roots in the soil, and the soil of delay is where your depth is formed. Delay teaches you endurance. Faith is easy when everything happens quickly. Faith is tested in the waiting. The waiting reveals what you truly believe. The waiting confronts your patience, your perspective, your peace. The waiting forces you to trust God when you cannot trace God. And trust that has never been tested is trust that cannot be trusted. When you endure delay and still hold on to God's promise, you develop resilience. You develop spiritual muscle. You develop a strength that cannot be shaken by storms or setbacks. That strength becomes part of who you are, and it will carry you through every future season of your life. Delay also exposes counterfeit paths. Sometimes God delays the blessing so you don't settle for the wrong thing. If he answered too soon, you might attach yourself to something or someone that looks right but isn't aligned with your destiny. Delay protects you from premature connections. Delay keeps you from walking through doors that weren't meant for you. Delay ensures that the blessing you receive is the right one, not just the available one. Timing is everything, and God's timing is always precise. In the delay, God deals with distractions. He removes people from your life who cannot go where you're going. He closes doors you were never supposed to enter. He breaks attachments that would have weakened you later. Sometimes what feels like loss is actually alignment. What feels like rejection is actually protection. What feels like delay is actually God cleaning the path so that when you step into your moment, nothing will hinder you. The delay also teaches gratitude. When you wait for something, you value it more deeply. You steward it more carefully. You appreciate it more fully. If everything came instantly, you would take everything for granted. But when you've cried for it, prayed for it, believed for it, fought for it, waited for it, when the blessing finally comes, you won't treat it casually. You will understand that it didn't just fall into your hands. It was shaped for you through time, tears, and trust. There are seasons when God delays because the environment is not ready. Sometimes the blessing is prepared and you are prepared, but the circumstances around you are not. The people connected to your assignment need time to get into place. The opportunities you need are still being developed. The resources you will depend on are still being aligned. God is orchestrating things behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. You think nothing is happening, but God is arranging everything so when the door opens, it will open wide, open smoothly, and open at the exact moment you are meant to walk through it. Delay also clarifies desires. Sometimes you think you want something until you have to wait for it. Waiting reveals whether the desire is rooted in calling or craving. If you lose interest because it didn't happen quickly, it was never a calling. It was convenience. But if the desire burns in you, even while you wait, even while you struggle, even when you feel discouraged, then you know the desire is divine. Delay purifies your passion so that when the blessing arrives, you know it is aligned with God's purpose and not just your impulse. What you call delay, God calls development. What you call waiting, God calls working. He is worky. Angel on you, working for you, and working things together in ways you will only understand later. When the blessing finally arrives, you'll look back and realize that the delay wasn't God ignoring you. It was God preparing you. You will see that every tear had purpose, every setback had meaning, every moment of waiting was building something in you. And when the promise manifests, it will not be late. It will be right on time. Just because you cannot see the path doesn't mean the path is not there. God has a way of ordering steps that don't look like steps, guiding you through places that don't look like progress, and leading you down roads that don't look like they're going anywhere at all. But every step you cannot see is still ordered. Every unseen movement, every hidden shift, every quiet turn, God is behind it. The absence of clarity is not the absence of direction. You may not know where you're going, but God knows exactly how to get you there. We often assume that if God is leading us, the path will be clear and the signs will be obvious. But God doesn't always guide with clarity. Sometimes he guides with conviction. Sometimes he guides with a nudge, a whisper, a burden in your spirit that you can't shake. Sometimes he closes a door so forcefully that the sound echoes in your soul. Sometimes he redirects you without explanation. He is still ordering your steps even when the steps feel confusing. He is still guiding your life even when your understanding can't keep up with what's happening. The problem is that we have been conditioned to trust what we can see more than what God has said. When the future looks foggy, we panic. When the way forward looks uncertain, we freeze. When things don't look like they're lining up, we assume we've made a mistake. But sight is not the foundation of faith. Trust is. God doesn't call us to walk by what we see. He calls us to walk by what he sees. And he sees the entire path while we only see the next step. Some of the most important steps in your life will be the ones that don't make sense at the moment you take them. The steps that feel uncomfortable, the steps that feel risky, the steps that require courage you didn't know you had. Sometimes God orders steps that lead you into unfamiliar territory just to grow your confidence. Sometimes he leads you into challenges, not to break you, but to build you. Sometimes he leads you into places where you'll discover strengths you didn't know you carried. The step may feel strange, but the ordering is strategic. Think about Joseph. Every step he took looked like a setback. The pit didn't look like purpose. Being sold into slavery didn't look like destiny. Being in prison didn't look like promotion. But God was ordering his steps the entire time. Each step was a piece of a divine puzzle. And if Joseph judged his life based on what he saw in any single moment, he would have assumed God had abandoned him. But God was behind every step, even the painful ones. The steps you don't understand are often the steps that position you for the future you prayed for. God orders steps in ways that protect you, even when you don't realize you need protection. There are relationships he didn't let work out because they would have drained you. There are opportunities he blocked because they would have distracted you. There are places he didn't let you go because they would have derailed you. You may think your life took a wrong turn, but God might have been saving you from something you didn't see coming. Not every closed door is rejection. Some closed doors are rescue missions. Even the steps that feel still are ordered. There are seasons where God orders steps that don't move forward at all. Seasons where everything feels paused. Seasons of waiting, resting, healing, rebuilding. Just because you are not progressing at the speed you desire does not mean you are not progressing at the speed God designed. Sometimes the ordered step is stillness. Sometimes the ordered step is recovery. Sometimes the ordered step is learning who you are without the noise of movement. And though it feels like nothing is happening, God is working beneath the surface, strengthening your identity, renewing your spirit, detoxing your soul from the opinions and pressures of others. Every step you take is teaching you something, shaping something, revealing something. You are learning resilience. You are learning trust. You are learning patience. You are learning discernment. You are learning the difference between God's voice and your own anxiety. You are learning to move with purpose, not pressure. You are learning to step out even when the step isn't illuminated. Faith is not knowing the whole path. It is taking the next step. When you look back over your life, you will see that the steps you didn't want to take ended up being the steps you needed the most. The heartbreak that taught you strength, the loss that taught you gratitude, the detour that taught you perseverance, the disappointment that taught you dependence on God. You may not see the purpose now, but someday you will look back and realize the entire journey was intentional. God is not improvising with your life. He is not guessing. He is not hoping things work out. He is ordering your steps with precision, purpose, and wisdom. And even when the path doesn't make sense to you, it makes perfect sense to him. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows how every piece fits. You are not walking in circles. You are walking in destiny. You are not wandering. You are being led. So don't let the unknown steps scare you. Don't let the unseen process discourage you. Don't let the confusion convince why. Oh, that you are alone. The steps you cannot see are still orchestrated. The path you cannot trace is still divine. The God who promised you the destination is the same God ordering the journey. Trust Him step by step, even when the step is hidden. Trust requires release. Trust requires surrender. Trust requires loosening the grip you have on the timing of your life. One of the greatest battles you will ever fight is not against fear, not against doubt, not against opposition, but against your own timeline. We all carry a secret schedule inside us, a quiet expectation, an inner calendar that whispers, by now I should have been further, by now I should have accomplished more, by now this should have happened. And when life doesn't match the timeline we created, anxiety rises, frustration builds, and we begin to question God's faithfulness. But the truth is, God is not obligated to move according to your clock. He is not restricted by your deadlines. He is not pressured by your pace. God moves by purpose, not panic. He is motivated by alignment, not urgency. When you insist on your own timeline, you create internal turmoil that God never intended for you to carry. Your frustration comes not from the promise itself, but from the schedule you attach to it. The blessing is not the problem. Your timetable is. Trust requires letting go of the timeline because your timeline is too small to fit the magnitude of what God is building. You think in days and weeks, God thinks in generations. You think in quick results, God thinks in lasting impact. You think in terms of convenience, God thinks in terms of calling. Sometimes God delays a blessing not because it isn't ready, but because you're trying to fit an eternal plan into a temporary schedule. Your timeline is limited by what you can see. God's timing is crafted from what He already knows. When God makes you wait, He is not punishing you, He is positioning you. He is aligning you with people, places, experiences, lessons, and environments that must be in place for your blessing to manifest fully. If He gave you the blessing before the alignment was complete, you would receive a partial promise instead of a perfected one. Trust means believing that God's timing isn't late, it's layered, multidimensional, strategic, comprehensive. God is working on levels you don't even know exist. Letting go of the timeline means learning to live in the present without resenting it. Many people miss the beauty of their current season because they're so focused on the next one. They treat the present moment like an inconvenience, a waiting room, a hallway they're trying to rush through. But every season has significance. Every stage has purpose. Every moment, no matter how ordinary or uncomfortable, is shaping something in you. When you idolize the future, you minimize the present. Trust frees you to embrace where you are, even while believing for where you're going. There is a reason God rarely reveals the full timeline, because knowing the timing would change your behavior. If God told you it would take 5 years, you might lose motivation. If He told you it would happen tomorrow, you might not prepare. If He told you it would happen next month, you might rush into something prematurely. God hides the timing because the concealment cultivates character. The mystery matures your faith. The uncertainty keeps you praying, keeps you seeking, keeps you dependent on Him. Letting go of the timeline also means releasing comparison. Nothing will sabotage your peace faster than watching someone else's timeline unfold differently from yours. Comparison convinces you that you're behind when you're actually on schedule. It blinds you to your blessings and magnifies your insecurities. But someone else's timing has nothing to do with yours. What God is doing in their life is not an indicator of what He will or won't do in yours. Trust means celebrating others without questioning yourself. Their pace is not your pace. Their path is not your path. You are not late. You are being led. When you release your timeline, you release the pressure to perform. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You stop striving. You start flowing. You start resting. You start listening more closely to God's whispers instead of reacting to your worries. Trust transforms your rhythm. You move with grace instead of anxiety. You make decisions from peace instead of panic. You stop asking, when will it happen? And start asking, who is God shaping me into? Because the blessing is never just about what you receive. It's also about who you become in the process. Trust also teaches you to value divine timing over instant timing. Instant blessings don't build longevity. Instant success doesn't build stability. Instant gratification doesn't build depth. God's timing often feels slow because he builds thoroughly. He builds carefully. He builds foundations deep enough to support your future. If God is taking his time, it's because what he's preparing is worth waiting for. God does not rush masterpieces. And your purpose, your calling, your destiny are a masterpiece in progress. Letting go of the timeline doesn't mean lowering your expectations. It means lifting your trust. It means saying, God, I want what you have for me, but I want it when you say it's right. It means acknowledging that his timing is wiser, his timing is safer, his timing is stronger. It means choosing surrender over stress, peace over pressure, faith over force. One day, you will look back and realize that God's timing was perfect. You will see how every delay made sense, how every detour was essential, how every pause was purposeful. You will understand that if things had happened earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. If things had happened your way, the blessing wouldn't have lasted. God's timing didn't just bring you the promise, it protected you while delivering it. Trust requires letting go of the timeline because the timeline was never yours to hold. Your job is to believe. God's job is to schedule before God ever puts you on a platform. He puts you through a process before he ever elevates you publicly. He develops you privately. We live in a time where people crave visibility, crave applause, crave recognition. Everyone wants the spotlight, but few want the shaping that must happen in the shadows. But God is not interested in giving you a moment of fame. He is interested in giving you a lifetime of purpose. And purpose cannot be sustained by talent alone. Purpose requires depth. Purpose requires discipline. Purpose requires the kind of internal strength that only the process can produce. The process prepares you for the platform. When God gives you a calling, he doesn't hand you the stage with it. He hands you a season of preparation, a season where nobody sees what you're doing, where nobody applauds your effort, where nobody celebrates your obedience. In those seasons, it's easy to feel overlooked. It's easy to feel forgotten. But hidden seasons are holy seasons. God does his best work in the dark. Seeds grow underground. Diamonds form under pressure. Gold is refined in fire. And people are shaped in private long before they are revealed in public. The platform is not a reward. It is a responsibility. It is a weighty place, a place where your character will matter far more than your gift, because your gift can get you there, but only your character can keep you there. The platform exposes you. It magnifies your strengths, but it also magnifies your weaknesses. If the process has not healed your wounds, the platform will deepen them. If the process has not humbled your pride, the platform will inflate it. If the process has not strengthened your identity, the platform will shake it. God will not give you a platform you cannot stand on safely. The process prepares your endurance. Platforms are not built for the fragile. They are built for the committed, the resilient, the steady. When the crowds cheer, when the critics attack, when the pressure rises, when expectations pile up, only those who have been strengthened by the process will endure. That is why God allows tests, trials, stretching seasons, and uncomfortable transitions. He isn't punishing you. He's conditioning you. He is building stamina in your spirit. He is teaching you how to handle weight without collapsing. Sometimes God delays the platform because he is expanding your capacity. You may think you're ready, but God sees the future. He sees the rooms you'll walk into, the influence you'll carry, the people you'll impact. He knows exactly how much capacity you must have to remain grounded. So he stretches you. He increases your resilience. He enlarges your perspective. Growth always feels like being stretched because you are becoming capable of holding more than you could before. The platform requires more of you, and the process makes that more possible. The process also clarifies your motives. If you want the platform because of validation, you're not ready. If you want the platform because of applause, you're not ready. If you want the platform because you want to be seen, you're not ready. But if you want the platform because you want to serve, because you want to impact, because you want to honor God with your life, then the process will refine that desire until it is pure. God will strip away every motive that could sabotage your assignment. People may misunderstand your journey, but God understands your heart. He knows when your motives have matured enough to handle visibility. The process strengthens your faith. When you go through seasons where nothing seems to be happening, where doors stay closed, where prayers seem unanswered, your faith is forced to grow roots. You learn to trust God without results. You learn to believe without evidence. You learn to stand without support. And once your faith has survived the silence, no platform can shake it. You become unmovable, unshakable, anchored in God rather than anchored in approval. People who have endured the process carry a strength that cannot be faked. The process teaches you stewardship. If you cannot steward small opportunities well, you will mishandle greater opportunities later. God watches how you treat the little things, the tiny assignments, the unseen responsibilities, the quiet roles. He watches how you serve when no one is watching. If you are faithful over little, He will make you ruler over much. The process trains you to handle much by practicing faithfulness with little. And when God finally places you on the platform, you don't arrive as the same person who started the journey. You arrive wiser, humbler, stronger, more grounded, more grateful. The process shapes your identity so you won't lose yourself when the platform comes. It shapes your values so you won't compromise under pressure. It molds your heart so you won't forget who put you there. You will stand on that platform not as someone who stumbled into success, but as this Omion who was prepared, refined, and strengthened for such a time as this. What God has for you is great, but greatness requires preparation. The process is not delaying your platform, it is building your foundation. When the moment comes, you will be ready not just to receive the blessing, but to sustain it, protect it, and multiply it. The platform is coming, but the process is what makes you worthy of it. Comes a moment in your journey when you must realize that greater is not just coming. Greater is being prepared through every struggle, every delay, every disappointment, every closed door, and every unseen step you've taken. The promise of greater is not hype. It is not fantasy. It is not an emotional phrase meant to make you feel good. Greater is coming is a declaration that what God has placed in you is evolving, maturing, strengthening, and positioning itself to break forth at the appointed time. But before greater shows up outside of you, it must first rise within you. Greater does not appear suddenly. It grows quietly. It develops silently. It forms in the places no one sees. Long before your circumstances change, something starts shifting inside your spirit, an inner stretching, an inner pulling, an inner awakening. You begin to sense that the season you are in is not your final destination. Even if nothing around you looks different, something within you knows that you're outgrowing your current level. When God prepares you for greater, He makes you uncomfortable with average. He makes you restless with the familiar. He stirs your spirit so deeply that staying where you are becomes impossible. But the path to greater is not glamorous. It is not smooth. It is not always exciting. Sometimes it feels like you are moving backwards instead of forward. Sometimes it feels like God is stripping instead of adding. Sometimes it feels like doors are closing faster than opportunities are opening. But greater doesn't arrive by convenience. Greater arrives by transformation. Before God increases what you have, He increases who you are. And that process often involves pruning, refining, and stretching. There are seasons when God removes things you thought you needed. He takes away relationships you depended on. He closes doors you were comfortable with. He interrupts routines that felt safe. At first it feels like loss, but it's really preparation. God will never let you keep something that cannot carry you into your next level. Greater requires space. And sometimes God has to clear out old mindsets, old habits, old circles, and old insecurities before He can release what He has planned. Greater comes when you stop shrinking yourself to fit the expectations of people who were never meant to understand your calling. There comes a point where you must stop apologizing for the anointing on your life. Stop apologizing for the vision in your spirit. Stop apologizing for the dreams God planted in you. Greater cannot rise in a heart that is afraid to embrace its own potential. You cannot step into a large destiny while living with a small mindset. At some point, you must allow God to stretch your faith beyond your comfort and beyond your history. What's ahead of you is bigger than what's behind you, and that's why the warfare has intensified. The attack always increases when greater is near. The enemy doesn't fight you for where you are. He fights you for where you're going. He fights you for your future, your influence, your purpose, your promise. The pressure you're feeling is not an indication that God has forgotten you. It is a confirmation that God is elevating you. The shaking is not meant to break you. It is meant to shift you. When the enemy attacks hard, it's because heaven is getting ready to release something heavy. Greater also requires responsibility. God will not give you more if you're still mishandling what you have now. He grows you before he grows your platform. He strengthens your character before he strengthens your reach. He builds your integrity before he builds your influence. Greater is not just about receiving, it is about managing, stewarding, and protecting what God places in your hands. God will never promote you to a level where your character cannot sustain you. So when God is preparing you for greater, he disciplines you. He teaches you consistency. He teaches you excellence. He teaches you humility. He teaches you to honor him privately so you can represent him publicly. There will be moments when greater feels far away. Moment where you question if it will ever happen for you. But faith is not built on what you see. Faith is built on what God said. If God whispered greater into your spirit, then greater is guaranteed. Your job is not to figure out the timing. Your job is to remain faithful until the timing reveals itself. Greater is not delayed, it's developing, it's forming, it's aligning, it's unfolding step by step. And when greater comes, it will not come in fragments, it will come in fullness. God doesn't elevate halfway. He doesn't bless halfway. He doesn't fulfill promises halfway. When he brings you into your next season, it will make sense why you had to wait. Why you had to struggle, why you had to endure, why you had to heal. Nothing will be wasted. Every tear, every sacrifice, every lonely season, every silent night, it will all be part of the testimony that ushers you into your greater. Greater is not just coming, it is inevitable. It is woven into your destiny. It is written into your purpose. It is the reason the enemy couldn't destroy you. It is the reason you survived what should have broken you. It is the reason you kept going even when you felt empty. Something inside you refused to quit because something inside you was designed for more. Greater is coming. And not only is it coming, it's coming with power, with purpose, with clarity, and with divine timing that will leave you in awe of God's faithfulness.